executive director. Oh, yeah, we got to record. Hit OK. So we have a lot of exciting things going on, and we have a new executive director, and so I know that she's been reaching out and trying to have conversations with everybody to make sure that she understands, gets to know you and gets to have some conversations about what the commission's doing right and what we could be doing a little bit better. We'll let her take it away, but I think I have to take roll first. So let's get that out of the way. And then we can get started into the substance of the conversation so that we don't take up any more of your time than necessary today. Okay, ready? Okay, I'm here. PK is not here yet. Justice Duncan? Yep, here. Chief Judge Lageson?
Here.
Okay. Senior Judge Merton James is not here, but I know she's planning on joining us. Lisa Edlund?
I'm here.
Great. Cody Hosley?
Hey.
Great. Krista Obold-Eshelman?
Yes.
Great. Professor Perry?
Yes, right here.
Okay. Professor Gary?
Here.
Dean Dobbins just joined us.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. We're calling roll. Representative Kropf? Not here. Representative Wallen?
I am here.
Great. Senator Przansky?
Here.
John DiLorenzo?
Here.
Great. We have quorum. Thank you all so much for joining us. And I'm going to go on mute and let Amy take it away.
Good morning, everyone. I think I've met everyone in here. So I'm Amy Zubko for everyone. I'm the new director. I started the middle of March, and I'm very excited to be here. Just to give you a little bit of background, I previously was at the state bar working with Susan Gravy, who's here on the phone call today, in the public affairs office. I did that for about 10 years. Before that, I worked for a state senator, Richard Devlin, who, while he was the Ways and Means co-chair, so that was my experience, the introduction to the legislature. Previous to that, I did state and local tax, and I am a U of O law grad and went to school and undergrad in Connecticut at Trinity. I'm very excited to be here. A couple of things you should know about the position. It is at U of O, but I'm actually up here in Portland. And I am, for the summer, because of some construction, I am working from my house. But once the construction is over, I will be spending a little bit of time at the U of O Portland campus, which used to be Concordia, for those of you who know that building. So I'll be splitting my time mostly here, a little bit there. I've also been traveling down to Eugene fairly regularly, not to kind of figure out the lay of the land, get to know the U of O Law School as a staff member and not a student, which has been an adventure. And also we have a lot of hard copy materials from over the years from all the work groups. And so I've been working with Debbie Thurman, who is our admin, and she's on the call as well. So that's Debbie in one of your boxes. And we have been working to get that stuff, and I'll talk about that more later. But I'm very excited to be here. Please consider me a resource. If I don't know the answer, I'll go look for it. So that's kind of my plan, and I look forward to working with you all. Thanks.
Great. So we also want to welcome, we have 2 new commissioners. And Amy, do you want to do a little introduction of our 2 new commissioners?
I'd be happy to. So we have 3 people who have, for different reasons, are in the process of moving on or have moved on. For those of you who've been on the commission in the past or know him, Fred Boss, who was at the Department of Justice, was the Attorney General's designee, and he was there, I believe, for quite some time, and he retired. Lisa Edlund, who is on the call today, thank you so much, is going to be our designee for the Attorney General. And for those of you who have not been on a work group with Department of Justice involvement, usually what happens, in fact, the 2 active work groups we have right now both have DOJ representation on them. Paul Smith is working on our municipal and justice courts appeals process, and Kimberly McCullough is the person who's our contact for the LLC Act. So DOJ has, I think, been participating in any number of our work groups over the years, and we really appreciate it. And Lisa is our commissioner. And then Dean Brian Galini has left Willamette and is headed off to Quinnipiac School of Law in Connecticut. And Dean Jeffrey Dobbins, who, for those of you who are old school and remember, used to be the executive director of the Oregon Law Commission when it was at Willamette. Dean Dobbins is going to be our liaison to and our designee for the law school for Willamette. So we're thrilled to have him here as well. Thank you. And then Professor Susan Gary is trying to get out, but it's like the Godfather. Every time she tries to get out, we just pull her back. Professor Gary has retired officially as of May 31st. Is that correct? And we're working with the law school to find a replacement so she can do lots of traveling and enjoy her retirement. But I might call on Professor Gary later to talk about a little bit about a couple of the projects that are in the hopper later on this morning, just because of her experience with the Uniform Law Commission. So those are kind of our changes to our current commission membership. And I will also flag that I know Senator Przonski is technically, he's up for a reappointment at the end of June. So we'll be working with the Senate President's office to make sure that that's all covered and taken care of so that he can continue. So.
Great.
Other than that, I think we're all up to date on our membership.
Yeah, thank you all for your service. I really appreciate it. Great. So I think the next agenda item is the budget, which is both terrifying and exciting in a lot of different ways. So we spent a lot of time. I had asked Sandy for budget information when I first joined the commission, and really it wasn't available in a form that made any sense at all until Amy started and really put a lot of work into it. So what we're going to go over today is the result of a tremendous amount of work on Amy's part, as well as Tash and some of the folks over at U of O to get things in a way that makes sense and is also a useful tool for our planning. So Amy?
I am going to share my screen in a moment, but I first wanted to give you kind of an overview of our budget situation. It's a little bit unique. As many of you know, Sandy Weintraub, who was the previous director of the commission, accepted a job, I want to say 18 months ago, where he was working in another position at U of O in the Senate as a staffer to the Senate faculty, I think. And he was willing to stay on and try to keep the lights on in the commission while the U of O and the commission looked for a replacement for him. So he was doing a little bit of work for the commission and a lot of work for the university as a whole. And that created kind of an unusual situation in that we now have some carry forward funds that were not spent because Sandy was only working some of the time and wasn't pulling his full salary. Now, so first of all, I just want to say thank you to Sandy for putting in that work and basically carrying 2 jobs, and just his commitment to the commission was, I think, really important through this transition period. On the flip side, we now have coupled with COVID and the kind of the slowdown in the work, we have these carry forward dollars. And I will share this. Hold on. I have to share my screen and it always takes me a moment to get there. So this is the profit and loss summary from, and does anyone need me to increase the size? Okay, let's see if I have the skills to do that. Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. So we're in a kind of unique position in that coming into fiscal year 2024, we have an additional $400,000, which is not, I think, where the commission is used to being. And so we've been working with Tash O'Brien at the U of O and Ray Sykes at the U of O, trying to figure out what this means, how we're going to manage this money, how we should handle it, and kind of thinking about both what the commission does, what's the best way to spend the money, whether and how it should be handled. So we have these carry forward of $416,000, and then we also received the biennium funding of $364,000 in that came through the last OJD budget. And I started in March. Oh, I have Representative Krupp on the waiting room. So just a second.
Oh, great.
So we have more money than you would normally expect for the commission to have. And now that I'm here and drawing a salary, that's going to obviously pull down the funds. Debbie is here, and we're doing some more work here. So Debbie is also doing a little bit more. For those of you who remember pre-COVID and at Willamette, there was oftentimes student engagement and student staff. So we are actually in the process of hiring a summer staff clerk to support the commission. And we're kind of looking at where to spend the money. So we have this money.
So Amy, can I interrupt for a sec?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I just want to frame the discussion by saying, a lot of the things that we're going to talk about are things that are the proposal to you as commissioners, because I truly believe that the budget reflects what we believe as an organization and what we believe the priorities are as an organization. So you're going to see, some student positions, some fellowships here, because I think that's really going to allow us to increase our ability to have take on more projects, to be more quickly responsive to legislative inquiries as they come through, and actually, do a lot more things. And so as Amy goes through the detail of this, I think just keep in mind, I would just like you to keep in mind that question of, are these things that you think are within the mission of the commission to do? And we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the conversation. But if you have any other ideas about ways that we could serve the state of Oregon, because that really is our goal here, is service to the state and service to the law in the state of Oregon. So sorry for interrupting, Amy. I just wanted to set that as a framework for this discussion.
So this is the information that came from the folks at U of O, and we worked with them on that kind of, here's our money, where our money has been being spent. And this document, this profit and loss summary, very much pulls from what has been happening at the commission historically. So it will only pull these line items if the money has been spent and there's been engagement and involvement. So right now, this document that you're looking at is a little bit sparse because there hasn't been a lot of activity. So this is the document that we will be sharing on a go forward basis, and you guys will be able to see every time we have a meeting, and you'll see, oh, well, we're spending the money here or there. And it will be more robust as there's more activity for the commission. So I just wanted to flag this as something that you guys should get used to seeing, and this is what we'll be sharing going forward. I also wanted to flag, and I'm going to scroll down a little bit, something that U of O requested, which is this program shutdown contingency. It's along the bottom, and it's about $135,000. And that is, if the legislature decides not to fund us anymore, this is how much it would cost us to kind of roll up the project. So there is that kind of thought process of like, there is a process for closing things down too, and that will cost money. And so that's what that $135,000 is. So that is kind of where we are right now. And then the other thing I will flag is this $389,000 here. that is the current service level amount that we think will be going into the OJD budget for 25-27. So I didn't make that number pull it out of whole cloth. There is some thought process to it, but I did want to flag that that's kind of where that is. So we do have, how generally, like, this is where we are. This is what U of O is looking at when they're thinking about the commission. And this is kind of the big picture. And so I wanted to flag that. So then more specifically, not what I'm looking for. There we go. This, and I'm probably going to need to increase the font on this too. So just give me a quick second. There we go. Okay. This is kind of our proposal. Well, it is our proposal. So we have both an operating budget, which is the funding that we get from the legislature every 2 years. And for those of you who, I think everyone on this call probably is fairly familiar with the legislative funding process, but as a high level, the commission's money funding comes through OJD. We're a pass-through, very similar to the Council on Court Procedures or the Legal Services Program. Council on Court Procedures is at Lewis and Clark Law School. The Legal Services Program is at the Oregon State Bar. The funding comes through the OJD budget and is distributed to the different entities that get pass-through funding. It's a 2-year budget cycle, and the budgeting process has already begun, preparation for that, and then it will be submitted to the legislature this winter, and then there will be discussion and final votes will be next summer. So I feel like you all know that this is a long-term process and it takes about a year, and so we're in that process right now. So for the 23-25 biennium, we received $364,000. And I have created a budget that, based on the money just that we received for this biennium, that includes, wages for staff, for myself, for Debbie, and then a summer student staff member to do work. And then we also have funding for the transfers and services and supplies is funding that goes to the law school. And then we have equipment, special projects, parking, all that sort of stuff. So you're basically, it's 2024 was a fairly lean budget because there wasn't a lot of activity. And then on the for the operating, then we also have these carry forward dollars and how to spend those. And the commission is really a personnel heavy entity. We're not buying widgets, we're not buying cars, we're not buying buildings, we're personnel heavy. So the goal and the plan here is to use the carry forward dollars to increase the number of staff. So right now we're looking for summer staff and we're interviewing for a summer staff member. We've also opened the process for a law student fellow, which is something that the commission has done both at Willamette and at U of O. It would be a year-long project. We're actually doing it in conjunction with the Portland program for the law school. So Mosen's here, and he is heavily involved in that project. And so it would be a joint project with one of the law students who are up in Portland doing working on one of the proposals for the law school. And then the other kind of the bigger conversation and funding is, I'll show you that this is right here, this $85,000, which is postgraduate legal fellow. And the idea is to hire someone who has graduated from law school and do a 1-year fellowship to basically be a staff attorney and support the work groups as they move through the process. And so they would get the opportunity to work with the work groups. They would get the opportunity to help with the research. They would get the opportunity to support that kind of development, work with LC as there's drafting going on and amendments. And then ultimately get an introduction to the legislative process. So they'll come to committee hearings and meet with legislators and attend hearings, and help draft amendments if that's necessary, and kind of get an introduction to the legislative process. And the hope here is to not only get staff support for the commission, but also to introduce more law students and recent graduates to being a lawyer in the legislative process. And so that's kind of our goal, is to kind of increase the number of lawyers in a small way, one a year, who get introduced to the legislature and might think about a future being a lawyer working in the legislative process, rather than nothing against people who go a more traditional route and are doing the billable hour, but this is just another way to be a lawyer, and we'd like to kind of support that. So I will flag that we have enough funding to do this for 3 years. And so that would be fiscal year 25, 26, and 27. It would not last past 27 without additional funding, but the thought process there is that we will have, oh, I'm letting someone in. The thought process there is that we will have the ability to try it out enough years, both in a short session and a long session, to see if it works, and then come back for the 27-29 biennium and either say this was a great idea and we'd like additional funding, or maybe this isn't a great idea and we should try something else, or maybe not do it at all. So it's basically a way to pilot this with funding that we already have. And that's kind of the plan going forward for 3 years. There's some additional funding in the budget for special projects. So if we wanted to do an event, or we need to purchase a new server, or that sort of thing, that's budgeted in there as well. But primarily the funding would go towards additional personnel.
Yeah, and this seemed like, and Amy, I know that you've talked with folks about the staff attorneys that the commission has had before. And this seemed, given the nature of the carry forward, this seemed like a good way to use the funds in a way that was not a permanent guarantee of a position, but that still allowed the commission's mission to be served by a recent graduate. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so I think that one of the things that do we want to have, does anybody have any questions about, Professor Perry?
Hi, yeah, thanks. I appreciate you clarifying about the legal fellow for 3 years, because I've been wondering about the next biennium, right? As I saw that carry forward going down. So that's unfortunate that it may only be for 3 years. But so here's a question that's entirely parochial. So I apologize for being parochial, but how are you planning to hire that 1-year legal fellow? Is that going to be an open to students from all 3 law schools, or is it looking like it would go to someone just coming out of U of O, the way the summer position seems to be going? I assume if it's a state job, it has to be posted and open to everybody. We just have, just.
Yeah, no, sorry, Valerie, you.
I'm speaking for Jeff too.
So-
He just isn't doing it.
No, and I think that is a great question, and I think that it should be open to graduates of all 3 law schools. We have to figure out how to get the mechanics of that to work. And so between you and me and the public meetings law, part of the reason too why we want to do it this way is because it can be very challenging to hire someone through the university system and can take a really long time. So this allows us to get someone in place pretty quickly too. So, but yeah, so I think there's a lot of details to be worked out. And our ask today is, if the commission is generally in favor of the position, then we can start doing a deeper dive into those granular details and figure out how to publicize it at all 3 law schools. Because I think it's going to be a really cool job, honestly, for someone coming out. John.
And I totally agree with that. So that's
great.
Yeah. Hi, I might have a bit of a contrarian view here, and I think it's just due to my general discomfort with government spending money. So just philosophically, I want to kind of defend the taxpayers a little bit more. And my 50,000 foot impression is that we have a carry forward that we consider to be a windfall of sorts, and we are looking for ways to spend it. And I am wondering whether we ought to take a different approach and first take a look at our pipeline of projects, and then add to that our expected pipeline.
Yeah.
And ask ourselves whether our traditional budgets are sufficient to process the pipeline of work that we are expecting, as opposed to then saying, well, we want to make a similar request to the legislature, and oh, we've got this this carry forward, and let's build it and they'll come, you know.
Yeah, no, I'm very sympathetic.
Is supply going to create its own demand? Is that the approach we're taking, or should we say, look, how about do something really crazy and tell the legislature we're fine?
So, John, my contracts professor in law school used to say that the law is a seamless web. And I think that, you know, the discussion that we're having today is a little bit of a seamless web, because we have to start somewhere in presenting this. But I do share that conservatism, because I think that there are a lot of things that are coming through in the pipeline. And we can move the motion to approve the budget to the end of the discussion today, because I think that that's a very valid point. Senator Brzezinski.
I want to, John and I know each other from way back. So, John, I guess that what I would say, this seems to be a way to take care of the pipeline. This is a means of actually having this individual, whoever that person is, to actually help get the capacity out and not have the commission not be able to complete a project more timely. And so that's, I guess, what I would say would maybe help us with whatever we have in line now. And as you suggested, what do we look at in the future that we could actually, I don't know if it would be a jump start or if this would be just a continuation, but maybe having more coming out of the commission than we've been able to in the past. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with that, Senator. And I think that, you know, let's table the motions on the approval of the budget, because I think the next part of this meeting is going to be discussing all of the things that are in the pipeline and all of the, you know, we have two really big projects that are moving forward, plus some smaller inquiries that have been happening. And then we have a list of questions that people have asked us to consider. So yes. Professor Dobbins.
I was just going to say that with respect to the shutdown contingency, I think that that's a very smart idea. As you know, somebody that went through the biennial appropriations process for many years and had several seasons where, you know, just given the nature of the process, you don't know for sure what the numbers look like and whether the funding is going to be there going forward. I think that this does create a great opportunity to just provide a little bit of assurance and perhaps take down the stress levels that inherently will build over the course of the biennium for people that are, you know, depending on this money for their jobs. So I do think that that's a smart way to use at least a piece of this carry forward.
Yeah, and when we talked with Ray and Tash at the U of O Law School, you know, because a big part of what, you know, that transfer allocation to the U of O is that administrative back end support. And, you know, they had recommended it because they said, you know, we really want to make sure that we're clear and very transparent in where this money is going. So hopefully we won't need to use it. So, why don't we table the budget approval discussion until we've had a discussion about pipeline? Because I do think that allows us to be better informed about why the ask is necessary. Is that okay with everybody? Okay. So So Amy, do you want to talk about the outreach efforts? So when Amy and I sat down in the first meeting that we had after she'd agreed to come on and join us, I said, I really want you to take this period of time between now, which was in March, I believe, and the end of the fiscal year, to get your arms around the work of the commission, get to know the commissioners, meet them, talk to stakeholders who have projects that are interested in moving forward, figure out the finances, because honestly, it was this crazy black box that I didn't understand. I don't think anybody really understood until Amy and, did a deep dive and had all these conversations with people. And so I would like you to talk about your outreach efforts, if you wouldn't mind, because I think that that's been a really good use of your time. And I think it's allowed us to get some insights into the work of the commission from the outside perspective.
I think I've met with many, if not close to all of you, and I really wanted to start out by saying thank you for making the time. I know that you all have incredibly busy schedules, and your willingness to sit down and talk about commission that some of you are a little bit new to, and some of you have years of history to. So I really appreciated the different perspectives and the thoughts on what could be done, what should be done, what you appreciated, and where we could improve. So that was incredibly helpful, and I very much appreciated that. And I also appreciated a number of you have given me suggestions on kind of that next step of who should I reach out to next. And so that's been very helpful as well. So those conversations kind of took up a lot of my first few months, as well as kind of figuring out what's going on with the commission, the work groups that are currently active. The other thing that I've started is reaching out to stakeholders, people who have either been commissioners in the past. I had a great conversation. Valerie and I had a great conversation with Lane. As you might imagine, he has lots to say about the commission. I've also started talking to people who kind of independently who have been stakeholders on different work groups. So talked to some folks who have been in work groups in the past, talked to some lobby folks, talked to Ami and Jillian and Elpro, who are the Judiciary Council, on kind of what's out there. Talked to some of the legislative offices as well, just kind of figuring out what's out there and what's percolating. So I really appreciated that. And I think the next bit in a while, the next 3 months is going to be a lot more outreach to stakeholders. So I have done that initial outreach, but I think that's who I'll be speaking with the most next. I'm happy to meet with any of you again, if that would be helpful. But I think it's going to be kind of targeted. Hey, you were on work group X. What do you think about this? Are you guys still interested? So that sort of communication. And this does dovetail a little bit with a project that we've been talking about, which is subject matter panels.
We'll talk more about that later.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about that later. But that just kind of that idea of like, who's out there, who's engaged, who's interested in what's going on, and who might be able to give back and participate. So that's what I'm going to be spending some time doing this summer. Yeah, so that's the commission outreach. So that's like the personal outreach that we've done. The second kind of outreach I've been working on with Debbie's support is kind of the presentation of the commission as a whole. So I've been spending a fair amount of time updating the website. We're getting the materials posted on there. We're cleaning it up. There is the recordings of all the meetings are going back a few years, are now posted. They haven't been posted historically. Updating the projects that are posted, making sure the reports are posted and they're cleaned up. We're still looking through some of them because some of them we only have in hard copy, especially the older ones. And that's where Debbie's come in. She's been invaluable in kind of digging through those old binders and being like, oh, here's the report from the receivership work group that we did back in 2015 or 2016. And let's scan, we're going to scan that and make sure that's up and available. So
Yeah,
That
and-
materials, oh, sorry, go ahead.
And I will say that, you know, a lot of the emails that I get as chair are from lawyers who are trying to figure out, you know, what is the legislative history? What did the work group consider? You know, what is the record of these projects that people have been working on? And so, you know, it's kind of a Herculean task, because I think when Amy took this on, there was a closet at U of O and stuff had been shoved in the closet. And so Amy and Debbie have been, you know, pulling the boxes out of the closet to try and figure out, okay, let's get this all organized and useful in a way that practitioners can access it. So I think that you both get a lot of credit for that. And I'm really glad to see that happening.
And I will report, in terms of the hard copy materials, we've found about 20 boxes of different reports and binders. Debbie's going through these. We've gone through about 14 of the boxes. We're cataloging everything, and then once everything is cataloged, the next step will be figuring out the best place for those to end up, and how to present them in a way to make them publicly accessible. And so that will be the next step, and I think we'll be talking about that in September, just with a catalog of what we have, what's posted online, what's not posted online, and kind of a proposal for next steps. And then the third part of what we're doing for outreach is really with the U of O and the students. As I mentioned, we are currently interviewing for a summer clerk. We have, with the help of Emily Warner in the Portland program, we are posting a fellowship for the Law Commission. I've also reached out to the Legal Studies program at the U of O undergrad campus to let them know that we're out there. I've talked to Career Services at U of O to let them know that that's an option. I talked to Dean Dobbins about possible stuff at Willamette, and Professor Perry also at Lewis and Clark about options out there that are ways that we can let undergrads know, and so that there is a pipeline again. So that will also be something. And yeah, Professor Dobbins, thank you for the reminder. There are materials that are still at Willamette, and in fact, our current website still links to some of the archive stuff at Willamette, and so we are going to be, that is part of the process as well. The website is we're trying to clean up what we have first, and then get the last few years up to date, and then dig into the older stuff to make sure that everything gets cleaned up and moved over to the correct spot. So it's not sitting in an archived like warehouse somewhere that's you guys have to maintain in a kind of off on the corner way. So yeah.
Yeah, and I will say too that, you know, part of the reason why this summer at least we're really focusing on an undergraduate law studies program clerk to help is because we didn't get in front of the students in time for a law student, just because Amy started in March and we started to figure out the budget and figure out what the plan was. So you know, my expectation would be that, you know, these summer positions would be more law student oriented in the future, but you know, we'll see how this goes too. So okay.
Does anyone have any questions about the outreach that we're doing, or suggestions on things that people we should think about, or anything like that?
Great.
I'm admitting somebody, so just someone else is jumping in.
Oh.
I'm
Hi,
not sure
who
who-
joined us on the phone? Hello?
Hi,
Hi,
it's
who-
PK Runkles Pearson.
Oh, hi, PK.
Hello.
Great. Okay. Great. Okay, so now we get to talk about the fun stuff. So I think the next agenda item is to discuss the two active projects that we have. And Krista, are you okay starting off giving us an update on the municipal justice courts project?
Sure.
Thank you.
So the work group on the appeals from justice and municipal courts process has been going on since 2020. So we're a 4-year-old work group at this point. And obviously we had some timing difficulties in moving forward at a quick clip with COVID in there, and also the staffing issues with the commission. So we are now on a good track to get something to the legislature for the upcoming session. The past year we've been we've had quite a focused group that's been steadily progressing through the many issues. The other challenge with this work group is that we didn't have some sort of model act that we were working with. It's basically a reorganization of a wide array of statutes that are codified in many different locations, and trying to pull those into something that's, number one, more easily understood and cohesive, and then number two, just modernizing, updating, and clarifying some of the language. So it's a really big project, and we will see if we're able to fully complete everything we'd like to, or we will partially complete something for this session. But the hope is at least to get something done that's worthwhile for the upcoming session, and to have something to present to this work group by the next meeting, which I believe is in September, for this commission's approval. At this point, and Victor, who's on our call here, has been assisting along with Jessica Menifee in drafting the statute, the draft bill at this point. And so we are heavily into the final process of getting a draft that's ready to present to this group. Are there questions?
I don't have any questions, but I really want to thank you and Justice Duncan and Victor for all of your hard work on this. I know it's been an uphill slog in some cases with a lot of challenging issues to resolve, but I really appreciate your sticking with it. And I think we're so close to the finish line on this that I think we'll get it across the line. So so I think we'll expect to have something to approve then in September, hopefully, so that we can get everything lined up for the legislative session. But thank you, I appreciate it.
Hey, Krista, this is TK. I realize that you have some really complicated issues that you're dealing with, but I wonder if you might give us, if it's possible, to give us a quick preview of where you think you're headed in terms of untangling the problems you've been working on.
So what we've been working on is, we started with the justice courts provisions. And so we have justice courts and municipal courts, and we have everybody in the group that we would need to for both of those court systems. So, but we've started with the justice courts provisions. We're hoping to figure out the municipal courts ones as well. But justice courts have been first. We'll just say that we may end up with the same set of statutes largely for both. That's one of the things we need to decide finally very shortly here, with maybe some slight revisions as to one or the other. But there's just a lot of details to be worked through, and I don't know if there's anything in particular that anybody's interested in.
No, it's just these issues have been coming up recently at the Secretary of State's office as we look at terms for the judges on those courts, and when folks get appointed or reelected or whatever. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what you've got. Thanks very much for all this work. I know it's a messy thing.
And to clarify, we're only addressing appeals and it's mostly from, the issues are mostly from courts that are not of record. That's the most complicated and the majority of the statutes. And so the appeals go from the justice or municipal courts that are not courts of record to the circuit courts. That then there's a de novo trial generally for those things. So it's a very limited focus, but still a lot of details in there.
Well, and I think too, one of the things about these in-depth projects is that they spin off these other issues. They say, well, okay, that's outside of the scope of what we're looking at right now, but perhaps, you know, we should consider them down the road. Okay, any other questions for Krista or the municipal project? Great, thank you again. Really appreciate all of your hard work. Okay, so next up is Cody Hosley, who has kindly agreed to give us a rundown on where we are in the LLC Act, which is very, very, very close to being done, hopefully. So Cody, take it away.
Yeah, thanks. So this was a project we started working on over 5 years ago, and it was over a series of probably 3 years that we were having meetings and preparing the bill. What ultimately became the bill that was submitted at the last long session. Ultimately, primarily due to the bill reading requirement, there was not time, because this is a lengthy bill, to get this bill passed. Since that time, we have been working with the Department of Justice and also Oregon Trial Lawyers Association, who had some amendments they wanted to be considered for the bill, and we've been working with them to see if we can reach consensus. And our plan is to do that and then submit the bill for the next long session, have it pre-submitted, and then we would expect to have it be passed hopefully in the next long session. Again, assuming that we don't run into a bill reading requirement or some other problem that would prevent it.
Yeah, and I think this is a good opportunity too for me to hop in and talk about, you know, it's a little bit of mea culpa, my maxima culpa moment for me, because my naivete led to me not really understanding sort of the political steps that would be necessary. And I really wanted to thank Ami and Senator Przanski for their help in this. And you know, I was talking with Amy about how do we position this in a way moving forward that the documentation really addresses any questions that folks may have, addresses some of these compromises and discussions that we've had with OTLA and DOJ in a way that preserves the legislative history, but still allows the bill to move forward in conformity with the Model Act. And, you know, so one of the projects, John, that we've been talking about for the summer folks to work on and then the students in the fall is to generate the reports necessary to go with these bills to support, you know, staff's understanding of the bills and the public's understanding of these bills. You know, both the Municipal and Justice Courts Project and also the LLC Act. You know, Amy showed me an example that the folks at Willamette had put together for some of the prior legislation. I was like, oh, that's what we were supposed to put together for this proposal. So, you know, so I think, pardon?
Yes, I
Yeah.
agree with everything you said, and then I've got a comment to add to that.
Okay.
When you
Yeah, and so, you know, so I think the drafting and going through and making sure that we anticipate where questions are likely to occur, and really clarify, okay, here's where Oregon has diverged for policy reasons, which are principally around, you know, transparency in the LLC Act case, you know, and some policy decisions that the legislature has made. You know, and really lay that out. I think that will help us in the legislative process and also help attorneys down the road. So that's all I wanted to say about that.
Yeah, and Valerie, I agree completely with everything you laid out. And if we want to submit something that is going to be valuable to a court,
right,
as legislative history, we don't just write a report. I mean, there has to be some interaction with the legislature. There has to be some colloquy back and forth. So you know, we can show that this is actually something that the legislature relied on. But, you know, I did my own postmortem on the bill, and I attribute it more to process than to context. I mean, you guys substantively get a gold star. All right, absolutely. I think it is the process that failed us for a couple reasons. First of all, Senator Pruszynski was wonderful, and Floyd, thank you for, you know, all the breaks you gave us and trying to get this in front of your committee. Problem is, we weren't ready because first we had to hang up with Legislative Council. Dexter was kind enough to substitute a new deputy and to take it over himself. And he did that. That delayed us, but that really improved the product, I think. Then, of course, you know, we had a big bill. And there's advantages and disadvantages to big bills. If it's a big bill and there's total consensus, nobody's going to ask any questions about it because they don't have time to read it, and they're going to rely pretty much on the consensus. As long as you can bring in people who every single member of the substantive committee trust, you're usually in pretty good shape. The problem we also had was we had a lawyer or two that weren't included in our work group, and they raised concerns. If you have a big bill and somebody that somebody trusts raises concerns, that is a death knell for the big bill. And I attributed it more to, we had a big party. We forgot to invite one of the neighbors. They were annoyed. They complained about the noise. Okay. What we should have done was made absolutely sure we invited all the neighbors. So what we may want to do is really be inclusive this next time on a review process for the final product to make sure that politically there is no lawyer whose opinion is going to matter who hasn't been briefed on this bill. And then the other problem was we got caught up too late in the session. And the longer you go in the session, the more opportunity you give to partisans on both sides to create animus. And that happened too. So, you know, my hope is that we could have a bill that was ready to go, that was thoroughly vetted, that was as inclusive as can be very early in the session. And I think if we do that before everyone has a chance to get upset with one another, we might actually pass the bill this time. And I'd be real interested in what Floyd has to say about this too, because that's just my general impression.
All I was going to say, I was waiting for the but fortunately there wasn't. I agree with you, John. I think the quicker we can have this together, the more neighbors we have at the party, the better it is. So we will not have the hiccups.
I want to weigh in really quickly too and say that what you're talking about, preparing a report ahead of time, I don't know what process you might have had in the past or could create now, but the faster that can get out to all the practitioners so they can weigh in, because I think if we try to pick and choose who we want to have comment on it, we're going to miss somebody. So I don't know that we can get everybody invited, but if we set something out for the public to chew on, lawyers do look at that stuff. We've had bills that come in front of us that were just drafted by a member who doesn't have an understanding of the legal background and how laws work. And then they got set for a hearing. And we've had situations where 2 hours worth of testimony came that we had no idea was coming because it was a terrible idea. And so that if we give people an opportunity to beat up on it, I think on a broad scale they will. And I don't think they're going to on this. It's not nearly as contentious a topic as that bill I'm thinking of. However, the sooner we can get some kind of a report is intriguing to me, but we want to make sure. I'm saying what DiLorenzo is saying. I'm just adding a little more context to it.
I'll say that
This is TK. What?
Go ahead, PK.
Oh yeah, I beg your pardon. Wasn't this also the bill where there was trouble where people didn't want to let long bills get read on the floor due to the dispute between the parties, or am I mistaking this with something else?
So that was correct too. I mean, we encountered a perfect storm. And so that was part of it also.
Your policy can be perfect and it can get caught in the politics.
Right.
I will say that.
Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say that this is something where, you know, having Amy in place and having a good website and having, right, sort of that repeatable process on a regular basis is going to make a huge difference in this space because, you know, when we were most productive during the time at Willamette, it's just because, you know, Wendy Johnson and the regular staff that were there just kind of knew what the process, you know, looked like and sort of had that really repeatable process. And every project is different, of course. And the politics always do get in the way, but having, you know, that work done ahead of time, and I know it was all done here, but sort of especially because the legislature can then get familiar with, oh, well, this is a law commission project. We know what this looks like. We've seen this before. We know what the background is that has led up to this. And hopefully that provides that John was talking about.
Great. Well, I really appreciate everybody's feedback throughout this process. You know, I was pretty cranky right at the very beginning when it looked like it wasn't going to move forward, but I think it's made it a stronger bill, and I think that we've had some really good discussions since that happened. So I expect that we'll have a bill for you to approve, or you know, an actual bill to move forward with in September, along with the Municipal and Justice Courts project. Okay. Amy, do you want to talk about the work? Well, should we talk about approved projects and then the work plan?
To that. So hold on, I'm just gonna pull it up.
Yeah.
So, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Please. So right now we are in a position where we have 3 projects that have made it through some part of the commission's process. I'm going to start with the stuff in 2020, and then I'll talk about the more recent stuff. So in spring of 2020, 2 proposals were approved. The first one was Uniform Partition of Heirs Property Act, and the second one was Uniform Electronic Wills Act. These are both Uniform Law Commission proposals that came forward. The Uniform Partition of Heirs Property Act, I remember as a stakeholder from the bar attending, I think, 1 meeting in maybe March or April of 2020. That was in the middle of, oh my gosh, what's going on in the world? We're all trying to figure out Zoom. And I think at that point, the decision was made to take it down a notch. Maybe we'll hold off until things get a little bit more stable. And so that has been sitting. It's still an approved proposal. The Uniform Electronic Wills Act, I don't remember a meeting, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. Professor Gary is shaking her head. And so those 2 were approved for the commission to go forward, but really haven't started. And Professor Gary, if you don't mind, I'm going to call on you. I think that you were the reporter for both of those at the Uniform Law Commission. Is that correct?
No, I was
Sorry.
I was the reporter for the Electronic Wills Act. I was not the reporter for the Partition of Heirs Property, but I became very interested in that act. And I was the one who wrote the proposal for the Oregon Law Commission for that approval. And I was involved in that 1 meeting that you remember. And we did have, I pulled up the proposal so I can't remember things. So I could report on this. We had outreach, where was it? In Oregon with interest, the Multnomah at the time, this is back in 2019 when we were putting things together, Multnomah County Commissioner Jayapal and the Chief of Staff for Senator Roeblen, both were encouraging the Law Commission to pursue the project. So we had interest in Oregon for this. I've been in contact with Thomas Mitchell actually pretty recently who was a reporter for the Uniform Act. It is being adopted across the country. I think about half the states now, they've had a lot of adoptions, and he is willing to help if questions come up or if there are things he can do to help us with that process. So we had started putting together, a good work group. It just pandemic got in the way, and it had to be put on hold.
And
That's
then,
what I recall as well, Susan. I was the chair at that time, and I think one of the difficulties is we wanted to make sure that we had representatives on the commission that represented both urban and rural interests, so that we could make sure that it worked for everyone. Because in the instance of the problem that this Uniform Act would address, being raised both out on the coast and also in Portland, and so we wanted to make sure everybody had input.
the third proposal was the Model Business Corporation Act, and that was went through the program committee last summer, July of 2023, and was approved by the program committee to move forward, I think, with a request for, we need to know kind of proposed work group members, is my recollection.
Right.
And so that one has gone to the program committee, but not the full committee. And what I'm proposing today is to reach out to the proponents of those three proposals, see if, because they have been dormant, see if there's still interest, see if they have suggestions for work group members, see what kind of scope and timeline we should consider, if there are, for example, for the Partition of Heirs Property Act, are there new people we should include, that sort of thing, and report back to you all in September on those three of, like, project A is ready to go, project B, we need to do a little bit more work. John, I see you raised your hand.
Yeah, and this is for Valerie and for Cody. Was it contemplated that once the LLC Act was enacted, that we were going to use pretty much the same work group with some modifications to then turn its attention to the Model Business Corporation Act?
So we
Or
have,
not?
it was contemplated, and we have presented this opportunity to work group members. But I think a lot of the work group members are pretty burned out at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some are willing to participate, but we certainly don't have a majority of them that are willing to participate moving forward with.
Yeah, I think Ludwig will, and I think DeGroot will, and there are others that have expressed an interest in doing that, because there is a lot of overlap, and and I think I don't know what Cody thinks about it, but it seems to me that we'd be better off not reinventing the wheel, and if we have at least a number of people in common, we're not going to have any major conflicts either.
I would hope that we could get, I haven't spoken to everybody on the work group. Probably Valerie's closer to the ground on that. I would hope that, because so many of the different, corporations and partnerships and all that, so many of the decision points are going to be very similar for all these different types of entities, that we could follow through with sort of the policy decisions that were struck in our discussion of the LLC Act, and that might help guide us when we hit those same questions as to the other types of entities. That, and the fact that when we started this work, it was spring of 2019, and a year later we were in a pandemic. So between the hoped for lack of future pandemic and the fact that a lot of these policy decisions have already been made, I would hope that future different types of business organizations could go more quickly, and that might help keep people involved. If it were to be hey, it's a 5-year project, or with the LLC Act, it'll be a year from now before that thing is finalized. If it's a 6-year project for every type of business org, that probably puts people off. But if we can get it so it's a, you know, a 2-year cycle, I think people would sign up and do it.
Right. Yeah, I have a distinct memory of Susan saying, "Oh, you've signed up for 10 years of work when we agreed to do the LLC Act." So hopefully that's not the case.
Me and Most, and our plan is to get through all the different business orgs before we retire, so.
I love that plan. I endorse that plan. And I know that Representative Shetterly also has a lot of interest in having us look at the Partnership Act as well. So the business law section of the bar thought that the Corporate Act was a priority over the Partnership Act. You know, but I think that we're open to discussion. I did reach out to the business law section before this meeting because I knew they were meeting on Wednesday, but I haven't heard back from them. So I will follow up. I did want to talk briefly about process, if that's okay, Amy, before we circle back to nuts and bolts. So how a bill becomes a law, how a proposal becomes a work group with us is someone will fill out a request or submit a request, you know, for some of these bigger work group projects and submit it to the Law Commission, and now to Amy, who will then circulate it to the members of the Programs Committee. And John and I had a brief discussion, but we'll have some additional discussions, I think, as the summer goes on about what the Program Committee process is going to look like. And the Programs Committee will then consider it and then recommend it for approval or for, you know, maybe not moving forward and continuing to work on some aspects of the proposal. So, you know, so I think we may have some proposals, as Amy said, to consider for the September meeting. And I think that we'll probably need some staff support for the Program Committee to evaluate some of these proposals and get our feet under ourselves where we are now on some of them that have been lying dormant, as we heard, for the last couple of years, just because of staffing constraints and pandemic and all the things that we've been dealing with in the last few years. One of the things, though, that I think that I wanted to talk with you briefly about is the commission, as it has historically been, is a little bit of a receptacle for information, meaning that, or for requests, meaning that it's necessarily reactive, right? So the section of the bar has a question, the legislature has a question, and then we have to put together a work group and have to put together people who were on the work group, figure out who are the people who are important, you know, who will have an opinion about this, as, you know, Senator Brzezinski was saying, and then, you know, get them all in a room and have them talk about the things. And so one of the things that I'd like to suggest this group experiment with, because we have already heard, as Amy can talk about in a moment, that there are inquiries that people would like this group to explore, either you know, drafting projects or, you know, questions about the state of the law with respect to criminal law and with respect to some big estate planning topics. And you know, one of the most successful work groups in the commission's history was the probate modernization group, but it had a fairly narrow focus, right? Because it was on the process of probate. So what I would like to propose is that in the areas of criminal law and estate planning, we put together people who would be our panelists, essentially people who we could pull from to serve on work groups, who could be responsive to questions, who have expressed an interest in doing this sort of policy work of the commission, and potentially create a pipeline for future commissioners. You know, I think it's particularly because I've had a number of discussions. It would be a disaster if I were to ever have an opinion on anything involving the criminal law other than, you know, what occurs on Law and Order. But there are a lot of folks out there who have some really interesting questions that they say, oh, you know, should we do a work group on this? Should we look at the criminal code? Should we address, I mean, Cody and I had a discussion about the Criminal Procedure Act, you know, not too long ago, or, you know, Model Criminal Procedure Act. And I have no idea where it would even get started. But so this group has the potential to assemble the people who can not only answer those questions, but can help figure out the priority of, okay, this is what we really need as practitioners. This is where we really need to be putting our time and energy. And so, and then on the estate planning side, we have these two, the Partition of Heirs Property Act and the e-wills group. We also have some proposals that Bar Public Affairs evaluated pretty recently in the area of estate planning and estate administration that may become proposals. I had a brief conversation with one of the proponents of one of the proposals that the Bar, Public Affairs declined to recommend moving forward, if that triple negative makes sense. And so I think getting the smart people together so that they can figure out how to triage and help allocate resources makes sense to me. But I wanted to ask you what you thought, and if you have any thoughts about this, or are there other areas where there's a really burning need for us to put together some smart brains?
Valerie, this is PK. Could I speak to that for a minute?
Of course.
So I think it's a great idea to have subject matter experts. I think we really need that in terms of how we evaluate things. But I have a couple of thoughts that might go along with that. First is that, it might be, the way to do this might be to coordinate with the relevant sections in the bar.
Sure.
To try to find those subject matter experts. And Amy is very well placed to help us do that, given her background. But the second idea is that I wanted to just reemphasize that as we're bringing new people in, which I think is wonderful, we really need to keep the purpose of the commission front and center, which is to have more of an emphasis on process than an emphasis on policy. In other words, in general, the purpose of the commission is not to evaluate what should we do policy-wise, but having had a consensus that something is to be done, and particularly for things that are already done in the law, how do we do it in a way that best serves our people and harmoniously meshes the policy ideas that the legislature and the popular consensus has already decided? And so I think that we need to think of a way to be able to communicate that clearly to new folks who are going to be evaluating these things. But I think it's a wonderful idea.
Right. I agree with that. I agree with both of those statements, PK. I do think that the bar has historically been, and the bar sections have historically been, a great resource for us. And I would not want us to move forward with either of these without consulting them. I do think that there are folks who, just given the way that the executive committees get populated, may not be on the radar necessarily of some folks. And I do want representation on these groups from Southern Oregon, Central Oregon, the coast, some of these areas where we don't have quite the same density of lawyers as we do in Portland Metro. So, I think making sure that we have some geographic diversity is going to be very important for these. And then as far as policy goes, I think that these are the folks who would be putting proposals together anyhow, who would be saying, okay, we really need to evaluate the criminal code. Let's put a work group together. But I think when we look at, I think that is how we evaluate whether there's a consensus in this area, is by having the right people in the room to say, here's the thing that needs to be done. So, so that's my thought.
That makes a lot of sense. I agree.
Yeah, and I agree that we need to keep our focus on what the statute says our mission is too. The other thing that I want to make sure that we do is be able to be responsive if the legislature does have a question that they refer to us, because that has been a question that in the past, and making sure that we can be nimble about that. And I think trying to forecast where those questions will be will rely very heavily on our legislative members, because, you know, you're closer to the ground than we are on where there are likely to be some of those questions coming up. But we really want to make sure that we're serving the state in that respect. Okay.
And we also want to be able to make the case to the legislature that we are worth the funding.
Yeah.
Because we are nimble, and because, you know, frankly, the amount of billable hour worth of time that we bring in to the service of the state on a volunteer basis is quite phenomenal, given what the investment in us has been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
Just one thought. I think if we are going to start putting together panels of subject matter experts, I would be a little bit concerned about picking just 2 areas out of the gate, sort of based on past experience, without sort of thinking about a process for when are we going to put together subject matter panels, what's going to trigger it, how are we going to compose them, and the like. So it doesn't look quite so arbitrary that we're picking these 2 subject matters as sources where we want expertise, perhaps to the exclusion of other areas where we would benefit from having panels, just to even communicate to us the need for exploration of law improvement.
Yeah, and Chief Judge Lageson, I think that's a really good point. You know, I viewed it as more of an experiment to see if this is valuable and a way for us to work in these 2 areas where I am getting a lot of inquiries. But, you know, maybe we can make it really clear that if there are other areas that it would be useful for us to put together some of these groups, and then, you know, in our commission meetings going forward, have additional discussions if you're hearing things that, oh, there's the rumblings over here in the debtor creditor section. Maybe we need to get some folks together in that area, or you know, in family law, for example, if there's some real challenges that folks are facing that it would make sense to address. But yeah, I agree. We don't want to be seen as preferring one area of law over the other.
Could we think of this as a pilot project in these areas that we know we have issues with, and then with the eye of formalizing it for other subject matter areas later?
That's sort of what I was thinking. You know, sort of an experiment to see if this helps our process. Anybody have thoughts on that?
That's a good idea. I wonder whether, and it's a while, whether the place to focus this work is in the program committee, right? Because they're already doing that kind of vetting work. And it just may be that having a couple of, you know, sort of standing working groups within the program committee to evaluate, you know, criminal law proposals or something like that might be a way to just sort of set this up as an initial matter. And then it's really within the scope of that entity to think about sort of whether you're going to expand it and contract it. But yeah, the formation of work groups is the different things that you've already been talking about, Valerie, are the really critical things. It's like, how do you assemble a little mini state of Oregon legal community in spot so that everybody understands that this has been discussed globally among the people that matter and that know about what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great suggestion. And I hadn't really thought about where it would sit in the commission, but I think you're right. I mean, I think as an auxiliary to the programs committee makes a lot of sense to me. Any other thoughts? Okay, I know some folks have a hard stop, so I want to make sure that we're respectful of your time. So shall we move on to the work plan then? And then we can circle back to the budget discussion?
I'm happy to talk about the work plan.
All right, let's do it.
If we're ready to go. Okay, so excuse me, I have hiccups. When I started, we were thinking a little bit about the fact that the commission has been a little bit quieter and how to identify a way to move forward without a previous year's blueprint necessarily. We don't have past practice as much to go off of because it has been a little bit quieter. So I spent some time thinking about what we're going to do, where we need to go, what our statutory mission is, all that sort of stuff, and kind of broke it up into 3 sections: law improvement goals, policy goals, and governance goals. The information that is part of the work plan, it's only 1 quarter, it's 3 months. We are starting small with the idea, like, let's figure out what we're doing for the next 3 months. I will create another one of these for the fall, another one for the winter, and so on. And then once we've got a year under our belt, well, this will be kind of a, we'll have a blueprint to work off of, and also have an idea of what it actually takes to run the commission for a year, and how, and what works and what doesn't. So what you see today is kind of what we're looking at for the summer. So the law improvement goals are for the next 3 months is for the working on the 2 active proposals, Municipal and Justice Courts and LLC Act, where currently Victor and Jessica are currently drafting working draft 4 for that one. So we've got that. We've got active meetings going on over the summer. The work group is engaged. We have some small groups chatting with each other, that sort of thing. And then the LLC Act also, there's some small group conversations that are being in the process of being set up. And we'll be drafting that as well. We'll also be starting those reports, and with the goal of getting them done. And so that's one of my big projects for the summer, are those reports and getting that first draft done. Policy goals, and I'm having a moment because go ahead.
Do you want to screen share?
Oh, absolutely. Hold on.
So people can see what we're talking about.
Yeah, hold on just a second. I think this is it. Hold on. So that's, and you'll see, like, I'm going to scroll through this because this is high level stuff, but this is kind of the year. So complete and submit proposal for the 2 projects, review the approved law improvement projects, which we just talked about, the partition of heirs property, e-wills and corporation, and then develop a pipeline of law improvement projects going forward. So we'll have that for our law improvement goals. For the policy questions, we're kind of looking at that outreach and communication. So it's focused on updating and continuing to work on the website, outreach to legislators. One of the things we've talked about is a possible creation of a symposium to kind of talk about what the commission's doing. And that would be looking at this summer and with potentially doing something in the late fall, early winter. The policy panels that you guys were talking about, and then the outreach to stakeholders and community members. And then for entity governance, we have hiring summer clerks and law student fellows, and then considering the case that for this post-grad legal fellow that we were talking about earlier today, continuing to work with the current and former commissioners. I know that before I started, Valerie had started doing some outreach to the previous commissioners and saying, hey, you have just amazing institutional knowledge and we don't want to lose that institutional knowledge. How can we, in a very nice way, continue to use your expertise and work with you and keep you engaged because you know so much. So that's another part of the project. The financial accountability, Valerie mentioned that we want to keep you guys up to date on the budgeting process and where our money is, and just having that transparency on financial decisions. Continuing to work with U of O and strengthening that relationship between the law school and the commission, and then a 5-year plan. So that's kind of our work plan for the full year, kind of high level stuff. And then we have more specific, here are our goals for July, August, and September. And we'll be kind of, go ahead, please.
I don't know that we have to go into these
No,
in
we don't.
detail because folks have had an opportunity to review it, but we did want to get this out in front of you in case you had any suggestions on ways to improve the work plan. I like a good business plan. And so the idea was that we would put together a business plan of, okay, here's how we're going to incrementally get to the larger goals that we think are important for the commission. And then, but if you have any suggestions or edits or format changes, I would love to hear them, because we want to make this the tool that meets not only Amy and Debbie's needs as our staff, but also the commission's needs to understand, okay, here's what we're going to do, here's how we're going to set the direction for the organization. Bearing in mind that this is a goals and a work in progress, and plans surviving encounters with the enemy have notorious rates of success. So did everybody have a chance to review the work plan as we sent it out? Do you have any? That's okay, you can go back if you have questions about it later too, let me know. But if you have any questions about format or suggestions, we'd love to hear them. We'd like this group to at least adopt in principle the work plan as we've discussed it so far and as it got sent out. And then, as we can make changes as necessary to it. But we thought it would make sense to have folks say, yes, we think this is a good, at least, direction to be moving in. Sound reasonable? Okay, so I'm going to move that we adopt the work plan as circulated for the next quarter. And then we'll review the Q4 work plan at the September meeting. Well, Q2 because we're on a fiscal year, but so I move that we adopt the motion or adopt the work plan. Any discussion? John, you unmuted. Any thoughts? Oh, okay, you can mute again. So all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay, any opposed?
Madam Chair, I'm just gonna give some protocol here. I think since
Please.
this is being video, you may want to do a voice vote.
Oh,
Because
okay,
some
we
of
can do
us
that.
are not voting members. Some of us
True.
are non-voting.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Amy and I were just discussing how we're not quite as Robert Rules of Order as we probably should be. So thank you for the suggestion. Okay, so I'm going to go through the list of folks, and we can vote. So I vote in favor of it. PK. In favor or opposed? Hello, PK? Oh, we may have lost PK.
I'm in favor. I'm here.
Okay. Justice Duncan?
In favor.
Okay. Chief Judge Lageson?
In favor.
Okay. Senior Judge James?
In favor.
Lisa Edlund?
In favor.
Cody Hosley?
Yes, in favor.
Krista Eshelman or Krista Obold Eshelman? Sorry.
In favor.
Okay. Professor Perry?
Yes.
Professor Gary?
Oh, you're muted, Professor Gary.
Oh, thought I unmuted. Sorry. Yes.
It would be a Zoom meeting if someone wasn't muted. Dean Dobbins?
Yes.
Representative Kropf?
I wasn't sure I was voting.
Member.
You are?
Oh, yes.
Okay, thank you. Representative Wallen?
Yes.
Thank you. Senator Brzezinski?
I'm a non-voting member as far as I know. And I
Nope.
think all the legislators are. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe I have the
That's-
protocol wrong.
That's what I thought as well.
I thought you were voting members.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I can, under the guise of a point of order, since I've been on the commission as long, I think, as Senator Brzezinski, I believe the legislators are in fact voting members.
Yeah, that was my understanding as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Most of the time we're not.
Well, I appreciate your vote, so.
I vote aye as well.
Okay, John DiLorenzo.
Aye.
Great, motion passes. Okay, so that takes us back to our budget discussion. And so as you've heard, there's a lot that the commission will be doing in the next quarter, in the next year. And that's why the budget that we put together is the budget that we think is going to be necessary from a staffing perspective to get all these reports written, to get all of the stakeholders aligned and have those discussions. And making sure that things happen with the right sensitivity to interests and, the awareness of people's concerns. So that's why that budget got put together the way it did, and utilizes the additional carry forward funds to fund the fellow program and to fund the student programs. Okay, so
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
I have a question. Is it necessary for us to approve a budget at this meeting in order to comply with what legislative fiscal needs, or can we wait until the next meeting and have a chance to think about it?
So I don't believe it's necessary, but we do want to hire the student, and we have the listing already for the fellow. So I would like this group to at least agree to the things that are in place with respect to that. Now, if we want to revise the budget at the September meeting, I'm totally open to that. If folks have additional thoughts that have percolated through to that point.
Oh, it's just because I just frankly haven't had the time to really look into it and review it. And if you're asking me to vote on something, I'd like to do it with open eyes.
Okay. Professor Gary, you're muted.
Sorry, I was half prepared. Because I think I will not be at the September meeting, I thought I would say, and this is in connection with thinking about hiring a fellow, just to provide a little bit of information about one of the pieces of that. When we did the probate modernization work group, I took on the role of reporter for that. I had been a reporter for the Uniform Law Commission for a couple of projects by that point. And a reporter attends meetings, takes minutes of the meetings, provides minutes to the work group at the next meeting so that we have a record of what's happening, and then prepares the report. And I was really interested in the probate modernization work group, so I was happy to do that. I think it is a big job, and as a volunteer, it's a lot to ask somebody to do. So unless it's a good thing for an academic, but unless the subject matter lends itself to finding that person, it's difficult. And I think that is something that a fellow could do and be a really valuable resource to the work group, but then ultimately to the commission. And I think it's hard. I know my colleague Leslie Harris did that for a work group a long time ago. So it is possible sometimes to find an academic who can step into that role, but it's not easy. And because of all the pressures on faculty these days, it's hard for people to find the time to do something like that. So I think having a fellow would be terrific. And we did have, when we were at Willamette, we did have more support. So when the probate modernization work group got started, we were still at Willamette, and we did have support. I'm not sure what category they were hired in, but there were people who were helping us, which was really helpful back then. So I think that's a great idea.
Great. Dean Nobbins.
Yeah, I would just say that sort of on the presence of the fellow generally, right, during sort of the most productive Willamette, and of course, a lot of the processes were sort of already in place, and a lot of that's going to have to be reconstructed just because of the delays that were created during the pandemic and so forth. That, we had, in addition to sort of the full-time director of the program, and I was also sort of executive director on top. Really, we were effectively in a place where, 1.3 to 1.5 FTE at the very least. And again, that was sort of in a world where we're sort of relatively well established. I think that as these built back up again, and I think as Amy really sort of starts to work on the pipeline and getting the law commission back that that's going to take up a lot of her time, where the substantive work is still going to need to get done. And so sure, some of that can get done on Amy's front and by the work groups, but having a fellow in place to be able to do that work is going to make a big difference. So I wrote John's concerns about sort of committing to this long term, but I think at the very least, especially in the first year or two, it makes sense to have that additional support in place so that we can really sort of get there again.
Okay. So we could split this up into two questions about whether we want to vote now as a threshold question. I'm going to vote in favor of voting now. Others may disagree. And then if we do decide to vote now, then we can move forward with approving the budget, at least as it is now, and we can revisit it at the fall meeting if necessary. Does that sound reasonable? Okay. Yes, Professor Perry.
I just had one quick question about what it means to approve the budget, because we have, I might have missed it because I
Yeah.
had an email come in, but
No,
are we
it's-
approving all 3 years or just next
No.
year's? Yeah.
No,
okay.
no,
So
yeah,
the rest
no,
is just, okay, I just want to make sure I
yeah.
knew exactly.
Yeah,
what
the
we
only
were-
reason I asked Amy to put together all 3 years was so that you could see the trajectory of where things go.
Fair, that was my assumption. I just wanted
Yeah.
to be clear.
No, it's a great
Madam Chair, is it
Yes, sir.
possible or workable? Let me ask you this, to approve those components of the budget that will justify you to advertise the positions you want to advertise it and hire at this stage, and then defer the remainder of the budget to the next meeting? Can that work?
I don't think so, because the real question, right, is should we use the surplus funds to fund this fellow? Because the fellow is the expensive part of it. Amy's salary comes out of the regular budget. So, yes, Senator Pruzinski.
I think maybe what John's kind of getting at, John, correct me if I'm wrong, is maybe it's somewhat of a tentative budget approval.
Yeah.
In the sense so that you can move forward. I think just making sure the motion's clear as to where we're at and that it can be reviewed for final at the next meeting, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what I had in mind. So at least, we can defer particulars on the rest of it. I don't want to get in the way of you hiring staff that you think are necessary.
Right. And the only thing is, I don't know, and Professor Gary, maybe the timeline on hiring a fellow. I would just want to make sure that we could do that along the timeline for the U of O. And so I don't know, if we want to have a fellow in place this fall, is that something that we could address in September, or is it something we should address now?
Any hiring that goes through the U of O, I can't be exact, but I'm guessing would take at least 3 months. It's a very slow process.
Okay. So, yes, Senator Pruzinski, looks like you're raising your hand.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't get my hand raised on the. So here, to me, what you said earlier, Valerie, is exactly what we're doing. This is a position really not for the school. This is a position for the commission.
Yeah.
And so we should stick to this being a vote of the commissioners for the commission's budget.
Yes.
And we do not want to have it intertwined with any of the university's budgets.
Yeah, it's not, we're separate budget wise. The problem is that the HR process at U of O is Byzantine, might not be the wrong word to use. And so even hiring a fellow might take a little while. And so that's my only concern.
But I guess what I'm saying is we don't need to even really go there because we're hiring as the commission within the commission. It's just that the commission is housed at the U of O. And so we should not be relying on that resource for the commission. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah, and I think we should have a discussion too about, because like we had to go through U of O HR to hire Amy's position, which, I think it would be lovely if we could get some folks from this group to take another look at the memorandum of understanding and how exactly we're supposed to run these processes. Because the U of O believes that it has to go through their processes. So that's a whole nother discussion, I
Valerie,
think.
this is PK.
Yes.
That is my understanding as well, was that we had to go through U of O for these processes, but if you would like a volunteer to look at the memorandum of understanding, if you send it to me, I'd be happy to do that.
Yes, we would love that. Yes, Judge James. Oh, you're muted.
Right, figured that out. So my question is, if we're looking for new lawyers, and the bar is this summer, and then the results are usually like by mid-September, do we really want to jump into that process when we might be eliminating a lot of new grads, new hires, new members of the bar who might be interested in the fellow position? So I'm just kind of, I don't want to like
Yeah.
cut it off for people who've been in the works
Oh.
for quite a long while.
Totally. No, I agree with that. But I think if we were to tell U of O HR, which is the path I think forward at this point, unless we can figure out a way around that. If we were to tell them today that this is what we're going to do, we probably wouldn't get a posting until August or September at the earliest. So, you know, because there's a lot of hoops to jump through. So I have opinions. Well, and I think Professor Perry raises a really interesting question about whether it could be a supervised practice position too. I have no experience with that program. I've heard a lot about it. I've heard a lot of students are very interested in it. So, I mean, I think that the details of it are something that we would have to work out and then bring back to you in the September meeting. But we would want authorization to move forward with that, is I think what the ask is here. So.
Okay,
Yeah.
can I make a motion?
Sure.
Oh, I would, before we do that, I
Oh,
want to,
yep.
I want to make a point, just so you know, my husband has his law firm does have one of those, what do we call
Oh,
it?
yeah.
Intern who is working on becoming a member of the bar by not taking the exam.
Oh.
So we have one in incubation right now, so.
Oh, I would love to talk with you about that at some point.
Right. All right, so Madam Chair, I'd like to move that, and I'm referring to the proposed budget.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to move that we approve that portion of the proposed budget under expenses, wages that relate to law student fellowships, summer staff, PG legal fellow, wages administrative staff, and wages director. And that we defer the remainder of the budget to discussion at the next meeting.
Amy, do you have any thoughts on that? And do you want to put the budget up so everybody can look at it?
Just a second, let me put it up first. And hold on just a second.
And my intention is to approve enough of the budget to warrant your advertising and hiring of the fellowship positions that you mentioned, and then give us an opportunity to figure out how much money we want to ask the legislature for the remainder of our budget.
Yeah. Amy, do you want to scroll down slowly and so we can look at what the rest of the budget looks like? Okay, you can stop.
I think there's a little bit more. I'm going to scroll down and Senator Przanski has his hand raised too. I just want to flag that.
Senator Przanski, do you want to comment?
Well, John and I did not have a meeting of the minds as to what we were thinking. What I was thinking was that we would approve the budget tentatively as in its whole, not piecing out any part of it, and then having a final approval in the next meeting.
And Senator, do you think that? Yeah, I understand what you're saying. All right. Well, look, I'm fine with that. I'm just uncomfortable voting on a budget without really thinking about it, knowing that not wanting anyone to criticize us for, just blasting through our carry forward. So I'll consider that a friendly amendment and rephrase my motion as Senator Przanski has stated.
Okay. Any further discussion? Amy, I think you can stop sharing. Okay, so we'll take a voice vote on this. So the motion on the floor, so to speak, is to approve the budget in its entirety as a tentative budget so that we can move forward with posting the positions that we need to post before the next meeting. And so that Amy can continue to incur the expenses that she needs to incur to do the things. And so I vote in favor. PK?
Yes, agree.
Justice Duncan?
In favor.
Chief Judge Lageson?
In favor.
Senior Judge James?
In favor?
Lisa Edlund?
In favor, yes.
Cody Hosley?
In favor.
Krista Obold Eshelman?
In favor.
Professor Perry?
Yes, in favor.
Professor Gary?
In favor.
Dean Dobbins?
Yes.
Representative Kropf?
Yes.
Okay. Representative Wallen?
Yes.
Okay. Senator Pazanski?
Aye.
Okay. And John DiLorenzo?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. So motion carries. So do we need a follow-up motion on this, Amy?
No, I think you've tentatively approved your budget.
Yeah. One of the things that I do want you to think about that based on this discussion, I don't think we're going to put forward as a motion now, but one thing that Amy and I discussed was some concern about the stability of the fellow program. And whether it makes sense to ask the legislature for a POP to stabilize that position going forward. Does anybody have any thoughts about that?
Can we make that the subject of one of the subjects of our next meeting?
Yeah, I think so, but I think we would have to get for it to be included in OJD, I think we have to get it in by the end of the month. So it would be something that would probably be tied to the next fiscal budget. So we would be having this discussion about it over the course of the next year and then requesting it can we request one in an odd numbered year? I don't know that.
So go ahead, please.
Yeah, yes, you would request it in an odd numbered year.
Okay.
But is this for I thought we had the funding for 3 years, so.
We do.
Okay,
Yeah.
so wouldn't we really not need it until the 27th?
Yeah, the question is whether we would want to stabilize it into an actually staff attorney position. But I kind of like the idea of it being okay, let's see how this works out as a fellow. And then if it's working out really well, then we can move forward with a request next session. Yes, Professor Dobbins or Dean Dobbins.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like this goes back to John's original point, which is that I think it makes sense to go ahead and have the fellow in place for the coming year and to sort of start this process up. But it seems like we've got that buffer to be able to do that program for a couple of years, and that should provide the foundation upon which we can build, a strong argument for why it is position should be in place going forward after that.
I agree.
Don't know that I've got the timing exactly figured out,
Yeah.
but I think it gives us a little bit of room there.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think it's important that we demonstrate value here. I mean, I think the work plan really shows that there's a lot of things that the commission can and should be doing. And I think with the tentative, hopefully finalized budget in September, we'll be able to really start showing some cool stuff and start doing some cool stuff. So that's all I have on the agenda. Does anybody else have any other things that they want to discuss?
I do.
Okay.
On the agenda, you will see links to 2 doodle polls, one for September and one for December. Please go in and let us know what works for those meetings so we can get them on your calendars quickly and soon, so that we don't have to futz at the end of August or in the holidays trying to figure out when are good times to meet. So I did want to flag that. That's they're right there. They should work for you. And if
Yeah.
anyone has any problems, please let us know and we will get you that information as soon as we can and fix that so you don't have to think about it again. And you won't get any emails from us in mid-August saying, hey, what works for you? So
Yeah, so Amy's being really nice about this. I believe in deadlines. So if we don't hear from you by the 21st of June, because I'm taking the 21st off for my birthday, I will be reaching out and finding what times work for you. So, and also if you have people that help with your scheduling, because I myself am terrible at doing my own scheduling, please let us know who they are. We are more than happy to include them on these scheduling emails. And then we can go from there. All right, anything else? All right, well, I really, really appreciate all of your time today. I feel like we covered a lot of ground. And so hearing no other, I say we're adjourned. Have a great summer, guys. Thank you again so much for all your hard work.
Bye all, thanks.
Okay, you want to stop recording?
yes, I do. And then